What's going on, guys? In this video, we are going to have a closer look at the views that we use in developing this simple API and come out of the box from the Django REST framework, just to understand a bit what is happening behind the scenes. So let's jump into it. Just a quick recap. Here we have my views.py where I define two different view sets, one that is returning a list or creating a new book depending on the method that we are executing, either a GET request or a POST request. And we have another one that is in charge of retrieving and updating or destroying the books depending on the method that, of course, we have used to communicate with the URL that triggers this function, this view. For instance, if you perform a GET request, you're going to retrieve the object, or a PUT request, you're going to update the object, or a delete one is, of course, going to delete the object. Which object in this case? Well, a book that we have in the database. So let's just explore what is inside this list create API view. Inside, we have two different functions or methods declared. One that is called get and post, and this actually corresponds to the methods that you are supposed to execute to access some of these functionalities. Okay, so if I do a get request, I'm gonna be executing this part of this function, or if I do a post request, you're gonna be executing this other part. And inside this get request, we have a list function. Okay, let's have a look at this. So what is inside this? This is basically just a simple function that is first getting the query set, okay? The query set is the one that you have declared first at the beginning. So here in the view, you get the query set and you apply certain filterings, okay? These filters we haven't touched in this series, but this is something that you can do. You can apply out of the box filters to the queries that you have in your API, but we are not touching that here. And of course, we have a pagination. This is another feature that we haven't touched, but in principle, the Django REST framework is capable of just implementing a pagination in the list of results by just adding one line of code, which is quite convenient. If I don't have any pagination defined, I'm just gonna give the query set to the serializer, and the serializer is just gonna transform this query set, this object, into the JSON format that we're given in the response, okay? So what about now the create one? The create one is pretty much doing the same thing. So we get first, in this case, the serializer, and we pass the data that we have received from the request, okay? And in the serializer, we perform some checks, like for instance, do I have all the fields necessary to create this new object? If so, I can just simply perform create, and this perform create is just saving the object as you do it in Django. Otherwise, you raise an exception, okay? There is also possibilities to return certain specific headers to the response, and at the end we get a response with a status 201 created and with the data that we got from the serializer, okay? So that's concerning the create and list function. What about the retrieve, update, destroy API view? Well, the concept is quite similar actually. Inside this class, we have different methods, okay? We have the get, the put, the patch, and delete, and depending on which one I decide to execute to make this request to the URL, I'm gonna be either retrieving, updating, or destroying. The difference between put and patch is basically that you are performing a partial update, so you are not requiring all the different fields that your serializer has to perform an update. Otherwise, you will require every single field. Let's have a look quick at the retrieve function. In the retrieve function is quite straightforward. We get the object, okay? and we can explore what the object is, but it's basically just give me the instance that you have defined in the serializer where the key, primary key is equal to whatever you have passed in the URL. So that's the main objective of this function. And of course, get the serializer, the one that you define at the beginning of your view. And there I just simply serialize that, and then I return the serialized data. So the object being serialized and transformed into JSON format. And here I have actually the update. The update is also quite straightforward. We first get the object that we get through the primary key that is being injected in the URL. We get the serializer and we perform an update. And of course, we check that the serializer and the data that we are given to the serializer is valid. Otherwise, we raise an exception. And if that passes, well, we just perform an update. So we save the instance that we have gotten. With the partial update, it's actually essentially the same. The only difference is that I'm passing another argument to the get serializer that is called partial, that it could be true or false, depending on where you are doing a partial or a full update of your object. The last one is actually destroy. And the principle is the same. We get the object and we perform this destroy over that instance of, over that object, over that book. And how do we perform this? Well, we simply delete that object and we return a status 204 with no content. Okay, so all of these functions, of course, you can rewrite. Okay, you can just replace for something a bit more that adjusts better to your needs, actually. Okay, for instance, we could in principle just define here another function called get query set. Okay, and in this function right now I could say, well, this one should return all the objects, but that actually are filtered by certain criteria. Okay, like for instance, where the name contains, it contains maybe the word book. Okay, so if I save that, we can execute again. So let's go to Thunder Client and let's just quickly do a get request, and where we apply a filter on the names of the books that only contain the word book. And here you go. So we actually have a bunch of books with the name book. That's the one that we have filtered. Okay, so I think that's all that I wanted to cover in this video. It's a very short video just to explore a bit what is happening behind the scenes. And I hope you enjoy it. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you soon. Bye-bye.